Hello, screenwriters, and welcome to Writing for Screens. Ask me almost anything. My name is Glenn Gers, and I am the chief operating entity of Writing for Screens, a YouTube channel in which I have tried to pass on to you some of the things I learned during a 25-year career writing for movies and TV. On my way out of the business, I am trying to leave behind a couple of those tricks and tools and skills, especially things about process that I think are useful. There is no grand theory. There is no right way to do this. These are just things I figured out as I tried to figure out how to do this, because there wasn't a lot of information on how to do screenwriting like there is now. And a lot of this stuff doesn't seem to be covered in your standard screenwriting how-to. So I thought I would just leave these things here for you. The main way that you can learn what I am got to teach is on my channel on the first 3 playlists on the page. If you look, this is a screen grab of the channel main page at the moment. And if you notice down at the bottom, there are playlists. Those playlists, here closer up. The first 3 are Screenwriting Essentials, Screenwriting Tools, Skills, and Craft, and The Process, Being a Writer. This is where I have tried to take what I have learned or experienced or figured out, put it into 10-minute lessons, little videos, about 8 to 15 minutes, somewhere around there. Each one has a very limited topic: brainstorming, genre, flashbacks, whatever it is. I made it the title, I made it the thumbnail. You can just browse through the thumbnails and see what there is to see. I urge you to take a look at this, because this is where the juiciest, most useful, most practical or insightful things that I can think of, I recorded them for you. Then the rest of the time, on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, I come on, hang out live for a bit. Usually I have a topic. Today is a weird experiment when I don't. To answer questions and talk about things that need more expansive kind of discussion, or showing things, sharing the screen, showing how I work. So let us do a quick hello to everyone who's already here. Hi, Maisie. Hi, Najo. Hi, Donna. Hey, Kitschy. Hey, Skitzelpov. I have not met you yet, I believe. And Nathan, afternoon to you. Oh, I'm so glad that you enjoyed, Jane. Last episode, I offered a script. It is still there if you want to read it. I have posted a bunch of my scripts on my website, writingforscreens.com. If you go to that, this is a little sample of what you have to do. You scroll down. That's what those arrows indicate. And when you get to the little grid, you will see an orange box on the right side called Creative. Here's a close-up of it. If you click that, you will find another grid with a whole bunch of things I've written. When I talk about something, I try to give you a sample PDF script so that you can read it yourselves. Hi, Hunter. Good to see you. Hello, all of you. So here's the deal. Today, we are doing Ask Me Anything, and I really mean it's on you. Ask me anything. Usually I come in with a whole bunch of material prepared to fill the time if nobody asks. So let's get right into it. Oh, Kitschy's talking about Jane. Cool, I'm glad, because I sprung Jane on you without any warning. Nobody had time to read it. Vida really anchored the script for me. As a skateboarder, oh wow, from LA, it's in the streets. Thank you. That is really cool. That is cool to know, because this is something that does happen as a writer. You have to make stuff up. As much as, I mean, there's a philosophical basic question of how, can we honestly, truthfully capture the truth of another person, or even know the truth of another person? The odds are no. In a grand sense, no. And so therefore, what we are doing is we are trying to estimate and capture and intuit and guess and create. And what happens is part of the work of becoming a creative writer is getting comfortable with saying, I am going to take a mixture of observations and stereotypes and fantasy and personal emotion, and I'm going to merge them all together and make a character. So what Kitschy is talking about is the character of Vida, who is a central character in the script Jane that I have got on my website, Jane. And thank you. Yeah. I lived in Venice for a long time. So I would, there's a fairly big skateboarder culture down there. And I would hang out and I would see a lot of people who lived on the streets, on the beach. And I began to get thoughts about what would it take for me to live on the streets? What would it take? What would send you there, and what would you? How would you approach it? Different people would approach it differently. And I had also run into this concept of the crust punk. Crust punk is a movement, a type of person, a person who just says, basically taking part of the punk aesthetic and part of the screw the world. I am going to not regard its requirements. I am in defiance of convention. And the crust punks very often just sort of modern day young hobos. Anyway, so that's where Vida came from. And then the main thing I wanted to make was that Vida was really, really admirable and ballsy, and she's pregnant, and as a teenage pregnant runaway on the streets, I wanted her to not be seen as a victim. I wanted her to not see herself as a victim. That was key to the story, because when the point about it is, I intuited, I felt like if somebody has a supernatural power, some people are going to be afraid of it and try and control it, but other people are going to say, that's so freaking cool. If I had X-ray eyes, I would, blah, blah, blah. If I had this, that's where Vida came from, that feeling. Okay. So. There. Thank you so much. This is Kitschy. Just rewatched Rocky again. Yes, it is. Although it's the relationship of Rocky and what's her name, Adrian, is kind of troubling in some ways. That first date is actually, by today's standards, it's not good. I have not seen the new Creed movie. I saw the first Creed movie. I have not seen the second Creed movie. I have not read the screenplay of Knives Out. I have watched Knives Out a couple of times. I think it's a very delightful mystery. I like it a lot. It's very clever. It's very fun. It's good. That's some solid stuff. Hi, Kirby. Maisie, I watched the... Okay. Just kidding. I know that there's more to come for that. Hi, Michael. Good to see you. Fade In has been... Yes, we had earlier Hunter had talked about the screenwriting software Fade In. There are a lot of screenwriting softwares. The important thing is, can you afford it? Are you comfortable with it? Does it work well for you? That's the main thing about software. Okay. I watched Off Season last night. Oh, that's, yeah. Yes, Off Season is right a couple squares over on the grid on this. Hold on this. Here, if you go to my website and you scroll down and you go to that grid and you go to Creative, you click on that, you will find the Off Season script still available in PDF to anyone who wants to read it. Maisie, I would love to have you read it. It's interesting because Off Season is mostly pretty much shot as written, and yet there are some serious changes, and it's interesting. The main thing is, a lot of what they changed was where I had things take place, because I had everything almost take place in the motel, and they moved it open. They opened it up. I'm not sure I love that, but whatever. What are your steps for coming up with a truly meaningful external goal for a character? This is a good question. It's interesting. It's tricky. First of all, I am not sure that I separate internal and external goals, because I believe any goal that somebody has is internal. They want it. They may want it because of it's going to do good for society, or it may be imposed upon them. That's the thing. I guess to me, an external goal, a truly external goal, would be imposed upon you. Like, somebody says you have to join the army. In certain countries, you hit a certain age, you have to join the army. That would be an external goal to me. Please do tell me what you mean by external goal. But I guess my feelings about truly meaningful goals in general would be that you need to find, first of all, meaning comes from you. Meaning comes from you, the author. For instance, Vida, my homeless runaway pregnant girl. There's lots of different versions of what you can do with any type of character. So the question is, how do you choose to interpret that character? For instance, Rocky. Rocky, the inarticulate, uneducated boxer, and Jake LaMotta, the actual, but still a character, inarticulate boxer of Raging Bull. Two versions of very similar guys. Rocky is essentially sweet. Jake is essentially angry and tormented. And Jake LaMotta is trying to survive in a world that seems to be over his head. So what I'm saying is that those are two interpretations of the same type of character. The main thing that you need to do is you need to, I believe, the truly meaningful goal, the main thing is make choices. In other words, to decide your definition. If they want to rob a bank, do they want to do it because they intend to invest in real estate, or because they intend to get back the fortune that their father lost, or do they intend to, just party? Whatever it is, that emotion, that choice is going to reflect a feeling, and that's where the meaning comes from. What their understanding of their situation is. For instance, in Jane, Vida believes that she has a righteous use of a violent supernatural power, because the world has treated her callously. It has been harsh to her and brutal, and she feels like therefore she is entitled to kill if she must. And I'm not sure I disagree with her. That's one of the things I would say. Skixelpiv is, I believe, the most important thing you need for a truly meaningful goal is you have to, in some sense, believe in it. You have to believe, even though you may, I don't believe that Vida was right, but I can put myself into her shoes and believe in it as her. You need to believe in the goal, in that character's shoes. Okay. I saw IMDb. No, alas, that Zorro thing is 15 years old. So the deal was, and I'm going to quickly scroll down and check some other things, but here's the deal with Zorro. God, it must be 10, 15 years ago. More 15. I was approached by a company that I'd worked with. They had the rights to only one of the Zorro books. The Zorro character was owned by Sony Pictures, but the very first book apparently had been sold separately, and they had the rights to this one Zorro book. So they were going to try and create a new futuristic sci-fi Zorro. That was the concept. And they had a director involved. They already had written a script with the director. They hired me to do rewrites. I did a large number of rewrites for that. That eventually got us picked up by Fox Studios. And they worked on it for a while with us, but they had a very different direction. They also were not, frankly, too thrilled with the director, too comfortable with the director after a while. They fired me. Then they fired the director. Then they let the whole thing go. Then the company, which was delightful to me, they treated me not Fox. Fox was fine. They were a studio. But this company that hired me brought me back because they had gotten a new director who had an entirely new vision. I did a new set of rewrites. So I actually rewrote this script, I don't know, 12, 15 times with radically different visions. But then eventually that deal fell through too, and I don't know where it is now. I think they may be trying again. I don't know. Okay. Another thing about Jane, I was skeptical about how you'd handle the demon. So the research scene about Sarah Maxine. Thank you. Yes. There's so many. This is interesting. There are certain things which become cliches of genres. There's the scene where the detective in a detective story stumbles into something and gets beaten up and knocked out. In horror movies, there's an explainer scene where some expert comes in and basically explains the mythology or science behind this supernatural evil. I think that if you use that right, and I think I did there, it's delightful. The audience enjoys it. They want an explanation. And in this case, I paired the research, which was a visual research on the computer, to another action to create suspense. So it was like they're finding out about the thing at the very time that this thing is being dangerously called up. So thank you. The numbers after the street scenes. I'm not sure what that means, Michael. Please let me know. Okay. So I'm just scrolling through because I'm way behind you. Yes, I like Margin Call too. I think Margin Call is the best thing he's done. I think his other films are interesting, but Margin Call rocks. Okay, cool. Yep, good. Speaking of 100, 100%. If any of you get a chance, there's a movie called Vengeance. It was this summer came out. B.J. Novak made it. It's a little comedy thriller, thriller with a humorous side to it, called Vengeance, about a New York podcaster who goes down to investigate a murder in Texas. It's dynamite. In the first scene where we meet the character, he keeps saying 100%, and he becomes so reprehensible. Yeah, not that you that meant that about you, Maisie. Yes, Najo adores Fade In. Were you worried about too much dialogue? I wasn't, because I assume you mean on the streets. I did try. It depends on the scene, but most of the scenes on the streets, actually, the dialogue is very short. There's only one scene on the streets of Jane where there was a lot of dialogue, and that was the notorious Scientology scene, which I not really Scientology, but like Scientology, which I said is cuttable. But most of the street scenes, actually, the dialogue is very short. There are large dialogue scenes, particularly one in the shelter, but that's an interior. You can control dialogue much better. Hi, Umbra Man. Yes, that is completely a valid reason. I totally forgive you. You get an exemption, Umbra Man. Otherwise, you would have lost points. Okay. Hello, Yash Alawat. Very nice to meet you, Mickey. Oh, I'm so glad. That is great. I am glad to hear that. Thank you. Hi, Jean. Is the script? Not yet. I will be doing a like, share, follow. I put the scripts up usually when I am doing an episode to talk about it. So when I get to that one, I will do it. What was a writer's life like? Did you often have... Well, actually, it's interesting. Most of the time, most of my career was spent writing features, which meant I was writing by myself. So I had a lot of brainstorming sessions by myself. Writing sessions with executives, which is the other thing that I had to do a lot of, could be fun or could be not, depends on the executive. Some of them, frankly, are just not very inventive, and they're just reciting cliches and business propositions to you. Now and then you get a creative executive who actually understands the creative part, and that is tremendously fun. Yes. Writing in a group on a television show was a very weird experience to me, because writing for a room, I worked on sitcoms when I was in rooms. And so therefore, the room is a bunch of people tossing out jokes, and the head writer is deciding which ones to. So it's not a free for all. It's not like sitting around your living room, getting stoned and making each other laugh. Although that is, without the getting stoned part, often it. But it's guided by a goal, by a head writer, and that head writer is saying yes and no. So there's a competitive and insecure part of it, which is not so much fun. I had relatively little to lose, but those rooms can get very anxious. There could be politics within people. Anyway, time elapsed between the attack on the father and the attack in the motel. You mean how much time? Maybe a week? Actually, probably a little less, about 4 days, my guess is, 3 or 4 days. What would be your top tips for a healthy and productive mindset, proactive mindset, as a creative and screenwriter for long-term success, fulfillment? That's a giant question, Donna. I have to say, I think that in this particular case, my top tips would be here. That's exactly what this is. Especially the last one, the process of being a writer. That's where my real top tips are going to be. This channel, the point of this channel is exactly what this is. This question is. So therefore, my answer, I hate to say it, is watch these videos. That's where my top tips are, because I've literally spent years now boiling those down to tips that I could put into the form of these videos. So that's my answer. I mean, the main ones are going to be, break things down to steps. Try to. I believe that it's always healthy to move back and forth from an outline way of thinking to a free-for-all creative texty kind of writing. You constantly go back and forth. The spiral process, that's my healthy tip. What's your takeaway from Michael Mann's movie Heat? My takeaway from that is a couple of things. The first thing about Heat is, if you read the script, the tip would be, you probably can't get away with writing the way he does. Because as a very successful writer-director already, making a big budget studio film, Michael Mann could do these giant paragraphs of background description that you can't get away with in a script that if you're not Michael Mann. The other thing I think about Heat is that it's an interesting example. Structurally, it's really good. Like, if you were to just strip it down to this happens and this happens, so we're cutting between these different angles and the different storylines and the development of the story, it's very clean. It's very simple, actually. It's not that complicated. What he does that's interesting is, within that, he will just take time to just voluptuously explore the character dynamics, especially the two main characters, Pacino and De Niro's characters, somewhat excessively, honestly, to a certain extent. Like, the first time I saw Heat, I was like, this is just taking too long. Since then, I've come to love how long it takes, and I think there's a lot of really good stuff there. Yeah, I mean, the truth is, the thing about Heat is it's really terrific, but it's also really cliched. I mean, there isn't like a lot of deep insight into humanity in these characters. They're just really, really well done cliches. The cold, calculating crook who has to follow his principles, and the cop who's so relentless that his home life is falling apart. These are not the most unexpected characters, but what Michael Mann does is just say, I'm going to give them so much texture and so much intensity and clarity that we just love it. And so I really like Heat, but I can't say it's like the deepest thing I've ever seen. The heroine is often the one in horror movies who survives. This is absolutely true. It's like you are numbering the streets as a shot list. I'm not sure what you mean. You mean numbering the streets? I divided. I mean, I did think, okay, this street is this one. That but that was scenes. That's what I think of that is just like that's what scenes are about. So the fact that you're on street 1 and street 2 and street 3, that's just to define them as different locations because streets are streets. So I just didn't want to say I didn't want to say a name of a street like, Pine Street and whatever, Broadway. So I think I numbered the streets just to say this is street location 1 where scene A happens. Then we're moving to a different street, so I needed to define it as street 2. That's all. I think that's why in Jane, that was just so that we could make a list of how many streets do we need to be on and what is each one about. So I wanted the flavor of each one. I would say, in that street, they should be kind of off the beaten path because they're having a personal discussion. In this street, there's people all around them and it's overwhelming. Does that make sense? Okay. Such a nice feature with those floating windows. Thank you. Well, I was ahead of Stretch. Oh, yeah, I'm ahead of everything. Thank you. Yeah, Fracture was a good movie. It was interesting. If you could go back in time and redo your career, what would you do differently? Good and fair question. The main thing I would do is I would understand that I was not as important as I thought I was, that I was there to do my job for other people, not to be a top collaborator. I honestly I was not very flexible. I would not say, okay, we're all working together. I'm just fixing this stuff to get this done. And I can see how the best way to do it is. So I would always fight for my way to do things. And I think that there was a lot of projects, especially jobs, where I was hired to do someone else's script, a rewrite or something, where I didn't understand that I should have kept it simple and been more, instead of trying to push for my absolute best vision, to try and get the person who was hiring me to get what they needed, get more of. I think that honestly, that the main thing I think that I didn't recognize was how much a screenwriter is not the driving force behind a film. I wish that sometimes they were. I wish that sometimes somebody would say, this script is great, let's interpret it and make it as good as we can, but we're not here to rethink it. But that's not how the business works. So I just think I wish I had learned earlier on that auteurism is not the best approach to a career. If you could write with anyone alive or dead, who would you like to write with and why? Oh, man, that's a fascinating one. You see, this is the interesting thing because there's interesting people who I think are admirable writers. I don't know that I'd want to be anywhere near them. Like Dickens, he's a great writer. I don't know that I want, and he's kind of a hog of the stage. Dickens wanted to be the center of the show. Write with anyone alive or dead. You know who I would love to write with, but it would be like his game. John Patrick Shanley, who is just a phenomenal, weird, but inspired and creative writer. I just love a lot of John Patrick Shanley's stuff, and I would love to work with him just for the kick of doing it. But I don't know. It wouldn't be my strongest stuff, I don't think, but it would be really fun. Likewise, you see, like Martin McDonagh, he had nothing. He's fine without me. He doesn't need me. Aaron Sorkin, he doesn't need me. Furthermore, I've heard he's a jerk. Just not the greatest collaborator. Martin McDonagh, I think he's amazing, but I have nothing to contribute. John Patrick Shanley, I've heard the interviews I've heard with him. He just sounds like it would be really fun to write with him. That's just, off the top of my head, those are the ones that come to mind. Um, Yes, yeah, no, rooms are, it depends on the room. The showrunner and the sets a tone and different. I've heard, I haven't been in that many rooms, but but I know people who have been in extremely competitive rooms where writers undercut each other or try to destroy each other's progress because that way they can move up. Rooms can be tough. Or the rooms I was in were the showrunners were supportive and delightful, and they made sure that everyone was really trying to work together. So, hi, Nate L. Holmes. I have a problem. I have too many ideas, nearly 25 story ideas. I like most of them. I want to do them all. It's very distracting. How can I do? I have the same problem. So I can tell you my solution. The worst solution is try and do them all at once. That's a bad solution. The solution I would say, the one I'm doing, is to say, put them in a rough priority list. Like, this is the one I want to do first, and try and prioritize them so that you're working on one main one at a time. And go as far as you can. Try and get that one done. So therefore, the ones you want to put at the beginning of the priority are the ones that seem most doable. Like right now, I have a couple of ideas for novels. One of them is the one I've been talking about, is in good enough shape and is conventional enough in form that I know how to do it. And so therefore I put it as, I'm going to get that one done first. As tempted as I am to work on the others, I am trying to hold off and not get my head into them, because while you can sometimes sort of juggle a couple of things, more than 2, maybe 3, it's just too much for most people that I know. So my answer to your problem would be make a list. Make a folder, actually. Make a folder, and in that folder, other folders. So you have one folder, which is my projects. In that folder, make 25 other folders, one for each of your projects. So anytime you have notes on it or thoughts on it or ideas, throw them in that folder, jot them down, throw them in that folder so you don't lose them. But prioritize those and say, this one is the one I'm going to get done first. Not best, not most important, but the one that I feel I'm excited about, that has a good chance of getting done reasonably quickly, that's within your abilities. As much as you can, choose one. And if they're all about alike, just choose one by feeling. But whatever it is, stick to it, get a draft done. Then maybe you'll show it around, maybe you'll go to another one and then come back to that, but prioritize them. That is my advice. What would be your tips for rewriting any screenplay? My tips would be, the main tip I would say is going just to well, wait, do you mean rewriting anybody else's screenplay or rewriting your own? The main thing is figure out what you think it's about. Figure out what the main thing is. What's the central story? What's the central action? What's the central theme? There can be many others, but if you have to say, like, if I had to say above all else, what is this about? What is the story? What is the meaning? The theme? That's the most important thing when you're rewriting anything. And then to say, how does this stuff work or not work towards that? How did they know you could write different genres? I had to prove it. I had to actually write, which was just my nature. I had already done it. By the time it came up, I had already written a comedy and a thriller, and so the answer to being able to write different genres is you have to actually do it. the other thing is you actually have to be able to do it. Like you can say, oh, I'd love to write a Western, but if you haven't actually really immersed yourself in Westerns, like I loved the idea of doing a horror, but I hadn't really spent that much time thinking about horror. So it took a year or two of really getting into horror to get really into horror. Out of all the screenplays, one had the most rewrites. Fracture. Fracture had a lot of rewrites. Meant psychologically. Yeah, I would say once again, I hate to say it, but everything I have to say, I am putting into this. This is where it all is. It's not. I don't always tell you exactly the incarnation of my personal experience of that thing, but every single thing in these playlists is personal to me, is my experience, is how I've had to answer those questions for myself. Okay. What do you think of using large language models like ChatGPT as a tool for screenwriting? I hate it. I've answered this several times. I will put a link down below to an Ask Me Anything. Hold on. I did a live stream entirely about this, so I'm going to put a link after this live stream is done. About 10 minutes later, I will put a link down there to that so that you can see in more detail. But my basic answer is I think it's stupid. I don't see any advantage. Dan, if you can think of an advantage, I believe in brainstorming, but I believe that is a human activity that you can't have someone else do. Here, I did a whole video on brainstorming. But the idea is if you are brainstorming with someone else's ideas, even if that someone else is automated, you're not doing the work. And therefore you are, whatever you're doing, it's not going to be authentic to you. And second of all, I just can't see a single advantage to having ChatGPT help you write. So that's the answer. What are beats? What are you? Beats. I did this one too. Beats. I did a whole live stream about beats. Basically, for me, this is my definition. Everyone has a different definition. The main thing that I feel about beats in a story is thinking in scenes. Okay, it's really important. Think in scenes. Please watch this video that I did. And this is interesting. I'm coming into this more and more. Most of what I have to say, I have said in these videos. This is why I'm making such a big deal. Most of what I have to say is in these videos or in the live streams. And I'm going to try and put an index of the live streams out for you so that you can see it, maybe even break them up a little bit. The thing about beats, as far as story goes, is beats are within a scene. If you think of a script as being made up of scenes, then if a scene has little subsections, those are beats. And so therefore, to me, the beats are ways of structuring a scene. That's what a beat is. A beat is a part of the structure of a scene. Like if you've got a scene which is building towards someone confessing that they love somebody, and there's like 5 or 6 steps that they go through in one scene because they came in intending to confess, and then there's like interruptions and revelations that confuse them or stall them or frighten them. The steps by which they get to the point that they overcome the obstacles and do the thing in that one scene, those are the beats. And so beats are helpful in terms of thinking of, like, if I come in wanting thing A, but then the first thing that happens is I see that the person I'm in love with is kissing someone else. Boom, now I have a beat of where I have to think, what do I do about that? And so you are dealing with an intention that is running into obstacles, and what actions do you take to deal with the obstacle that got into your way between beginning the scene and where the scene ends. That's what beats are. That's what the use is of story beats. If you are talking about beats as the steps in an outline, I don't think of those as beats. I call those scenes because I think that it's really important to think in scenes. And I also think that it's really important to think of the outline as, some people call that a beat sheet. But I did 2 videos on outlining where I try and define why you break things into scenes. A script is made of scenes. Literally, the building, there's nothing in a script that isn't within a scene. So therefore, your scene is built out of piling up these bricks of scenes. So if you want to call those beats, if that's what you mean by beats, Alex, then I would say everything I have to say about scenes and outlines is what you're saying about beats. What I say when I mean beats is within a scene. There are subsections. And that's what I think beats are useful of. Okay. Let's hold up on some questions now because we're actually I'm gonna run out of time. The colors. I think I've discussed this before. The colors are, once a script has begun. This is when a film goes into production, you start with a script. Okay, but that script is going to be changed repeatedly. So there's going to be production, like things are going to change locations. There's also going to be rewrites done as it goes along. So they need to make sure that everyone is working with the same script. And sometimes they'll just pull out a section of pages and just fix that section of pages. So what they do is they've got an order of colors, because it used to be that people had physical scripts on paper and they need to differentiate the different kinds of, the different versions, the different iterations, drafts of the script. So they'd say the first one was white pages, second one was yellow, third was green, fourth. So everyone could say, do you have the blue pages? Are you working with, like, have you gotten up to the most recent draft, which we identified as color? That's what those colors mean. Okay. What changes would you like to see for the future of getting screenwriters supported to succeed? That's a tricky one. I'm not sure supported by who for what, because succeed is a tricky thing. Succeed artistically or succeed financially? Succeed financially it would be cool if to me, instead of making a $200 million movie, they made 10 $20 movies. I don't know about the math, but what I'm saying is I would rather see more stuff get made cheaply and spread the art and the work around, because I think we could all make a decent living, and instead of one person making $20 million, 20 people make $1 million. So that's in the business, that's what I would say. Lower budgets, more productions with less need to make an enormous hit in order to be even profitable. That seems to me better. As far as otherwise, what would help? Great state-supported schools that all taught what I think are right. Works Project Association administration, like they had in the Depression, where they paid artists to create art for the government. That would all be great. That's me. Hi, Whiskly Jimmy. Why do you think the plot of most video games are not so good when turning a game's plot into a movie often falls flat? Okay, tricky. 2 things. One, the plot of video games is often not good because you're not able to do. This is interesting. Video games operate on different principles than a straight story, because the mechanics of a video game don't allow you to manipulate the actions of the characters. Most of the mechanics of a video game are essentially fighting, fighting or moving. There are some video games where you will encounter a character and then you'll have 2 or 3 dialogue choices, and you choose that, and then if whatever, depending on what you choose, the story will branch off in different directions. All of that is difficult for good storytelling. The amount of storytelling work you have to do in those multiple choice dialogue things is huge, because depending on what choice, you have to actually write the same story 3 different ways. And that's every time you have a dialogue, you go 3 different ways. So the branching out of the story gets very, very difficult if you're going to pursue it honestly. If you're going to say, what would really happen if they took this path instead of that path? That's storytelling 101. And the point is, what a storyteller usually does is say, I'm going to choose for them that they choose this path, and I'm exploring the consequences of that. If what you're saying is, well, either one could happen, you're not able to make a choice. You have to make a choice to tell 2 entirely separate stories, often antithetical. It's not that that can't be done. That's just a very specific set of talents. And it's also a very different idea about storytelling, because most of us believe that storytelling is the choices, you're following the choices and understanding the meaning of those choices, and it can only go one way. Video games, by their nature, mostly can't just go one way, or if they do, the way that they go one way is just essentially within a scene. If you break a video game down into scenes, you say, okay, in this scene, they've got to get through the old hotel, but the enemy is there and they're shooting at them. That's basically just a gunfight. And you can dress up that gunfight different ways, but essentially all that can happen is either our guy kills them or they kill our guy. That's it. The mechanic actually gets boring really fast as far as storytelling goes in video games at the moment. What's going to be interesting to me is if we can figure out ways to tell stories through video games. And now and then there are some. People are exploring this. This art form it's just at the beginning of it. So the answer is the reason that many, many games turn into bad movies is twofold. One, the fun of the game is generally not the story. The fun of the game is the mechanics in the world and the cleverness of how, and the difficulty of how you do it and stuff like that. So none of that is good storytelling. The second problem is most people who make movies from video games aren't good storytellers. They're into other things. They're into the action, or they're into the graphic design, or whatever it is. They're just not that into stories. They're thinking in cliches. Most video games, they have not beefed up their literary divisions. They will be. I guarantee you, as they go on, the sophistication of video game storytelling is going to increase, and it's going to create some... There is going to be the Citizen Kane of video games. It's going to freak people out, and it's going to be great. We're headed that way. But right now, it depends. There are some great games. There are some games that really challenge you emotionally and artistically. Okay. Might be a weird question, but politics. Would you write something like that? Because there's... Like what? Sorry, I lost track. Something like what? Let me know, Maisie, because I'm confused. I'm not sure I'm not sure what you're talking about, right? Right, something like what? Hello, Wakar. What is the best way to learn this craft for somebody who's only doing it in their free time? I mean, okay, I will tell you, and I feel badly to be saying this, but I also don't, because I put 3 years into doing this. This is where you will get the absolute best crafts stuff. I made these videos, which I break down the craft into really, really detailed steps that I think are very helpful and very flexible, so that you can do it however you want. So the answer is, and by the way, and this is a freaking great question. How to improve in Excel if the stakes are low? That's how you improve in Excel. Keep the stakes low. If the stakes are low, you can improve by experimenting, by exploring, by doing the work and seeing how it plays, and then doing the next one and saying, oh, I bet I could make the dialogue a little faster, or I could make the characters a little more emotional. Whatever it is that you're trying to improve, everyone is different, so I can't say it'll always be this. But whatever it is, by keeping the stakes low and continuously doing it, you will get better. That's the key to learning an art. 10,000 hours. We are not kidding when we say this. Malcolm Gladwell really was onto something here. If you think about, and if you are doing this in your free time as a hobby, that's great, but do it a lot. Do it as much free time. Like if you have, if you're doing it free time in your hobby and you can only do it Saturday afternoons, try not to miss any Saturday afternoons, because it's going to take a lot of Saturday afternoons. I don't think you have to spend all day every day working on this stuff, but keep your eyes on it. Think about it in your lunch hour or whatever it is. But the main thing is do the work. If you do the work and watch my videos, honestly, I feel badly, but my videos are the absolute best way that I know to learn this. So hope that helps. Yes, John Patrick Shanley wrote Moonstruck and Doubt, and a bunch of other great things. He's a fascinating writer. I am from India. Is it necessary to get the theme into while writing the story? No. At some point, I did a whole video on theme. So definitely look at that video. This is the thumbnail for that video. Go to my channel and look up the video on theme. My basic answer to any question is sooner or later, you should have a theme. You may figure it out after you figure out the plot. You may figure out your plot, write your whole script, and then say, this is really about how a parent and a child come back together. Whatever it is. The point is, you may not figure it out till your first draft, but then the second time when you're doing your rewriting and working on it, you'll say, maybe I can make this line emphasize that feeling of the theme more. Do you have to do it before you write the story? No. Do you have to do it to have a good story? No, but then it'll be there anyway, so you might as well try and be competent at it. That's what I would say. I guess that was, but BVS was right. No, I don't know that I think it was great. I had some real fun with Batman versus Superman. I think there are some scenes in it and sequences that are great, and some ideas in it that are terrific. I think it's kind of a mess with both the weaknesses and strengths of Mr. Snyder. Yeah, it was interesting. It is an interesting movie. I know people who cannot, you can't say anything good about it. I think among Mr. Snyder's work, that's actually among the better. I like it. Hi, Thomas. Okay. Scene at the shelter. We're talking about Jane. Everyone has an opinion on what's going on. Yes, exactly. Thank you. That was something I was hoping that would be noticed. That's actually kind of like a high point of the story for me. Is, as I said, I wanted that story to be variations on the theme of how women respond to violent men, toxic men. And so the scene in the shelter, the whole point of the shelter is that every single person in there has a slightly different take on how to respond to toxic men. And so the fun for me was when they all start debating it with each other. Yes. Maisie, talking about multiple projects. I do that folder thing, but I never dig into some of them. Yes, me too. And this is what I want. Do want to warn all of you multiple projectors out there. I am now at the end of my career. There's only so much time I've got. And so therefore I'm looking at the many, many folders and many, many ideas. And I'm saying, oh, I really like all of those. I'll never get to them. So do try and say to yourself, if something is feeling strong, do it now. Get to it. Don't put it off. A lot of things I put off what I thought was going to be the best thing till I was better. And you know what? I should have written it when I wasn't better and seen what came out. Okay. Okay. Hello, Amina. It's nice. I'm glad that you are here. Okay, let's moving right along. Sometimes I feel I'm not good enough. Then I stop writing. Think it is not an original idea. Basically, I believe there is no such thing as an original idea. The only thing that's original is the amount, the creativity that you bring to it in your own way. There is nothing is original enough to make it like. There is nothing original. Everything has been done. The question is, by bringing your own passion to it, you may make it feel new or authentic or exciting. That's all that matters. We don't need it to be new. Hamlet wasn't a new story. Macbeth wasn't a new story. There are no new stories. There's always going to be some basic model that something is taken from, even if it's obscure or unrelated. Nothing comes out of nowhere. So the answer is, what you do is should be judged by the quality it brings, not by the fact that it's all new. The need for novelty is a business need. That is, and honestly, the sad thing about the business need for novelty is how easily it gets suckered to where something that's completely old will be, because it's been out of fashion for a while, suddenly discovered as new. And that's just pathetic. But, what are you going to do? Okay. What kind of shows are you watching at the moment? Thank you. I hesitate to first of all, I hesitate to recommend anything that I'm in the middle of, because sometimes things go south. I've watched some series where it's like it starts out really promising, and then at the end it's just falls apart. So anything I'm currently watching, I don't want to recommend. Anything I recently watched, I just can't remember at the moment. I will. What I'm going to try and do is eventually start to put on my website some recommendations. Offhand, I can't think of anything right now. I want to scroll down and make sure I'm not missing any other questions. I will try and get back to that one, Maisie. What is your best time to write, and how did you determine it was best? Best time for me is morning. I tend to wake up very early. I wake up at like 5 in the morning. If I'm lucky, sometimes 4. And I wake up and I'm often very tired, but my brain is going. When I wake up in the morning, my brain is going. So that's the best time, because I'm up. I am thinking. I'm creative. As the day goes on, 2, 3 o'clock, I'm done. That's originally why I started doing these late in my afternoon, because I was screwed up. Nothing was going to happen in the afternoon anyway. By 5 o'clock in the evening, forget it. I cannot do anything except watch TV and enjoy other people's stuff. And I determined it by experience, by feeling. I found out that I just am terrible at writing at night. You were extremely helpful with me realize my central character in my screenplay. Yay! Sorry. I'm sorry, I can't. I'm not even sure I can keep doing the live streams. I am having a real time crunch. In fact, I'm going to take the next 2 weeks off. I've got some stuff happening in my home life, so I have to take some time off. So the next 2 weeks, I am not going to be live streaming. I will be releasing videos. I'm making new videos, but the time it takes to create and edit those videos and the time it takes to live streams, I haven't worked on my novel in months. So let's see. Hunter, if you want an exhaustive look at rewriting, check Screenwriting is Rewriting. Oh, interesting. EPS, the famous EPS and Cash. Cool. Thank you, Kitschy. That's cool. My thoughts on screenwriting books in general are I don't like to critique any other people's work, because there's something valuable in all of them. Second of all, I haven't read most of them because almost every screenwriting book in the world came out after I was a professional. Screenwriting books as a whole have only been coming out since the late 80s, mainly the 90s and on. Most of them in the 21st century. I didn't need a screenwriting book then, and it was so I haven't read most of them. I can't really honestly. I will say I feel badly about this, but Save the Cat was the hottest thing in the business for a few years. It's kind of quirky and unreliable. It's interesting, but 90% of what Blake Snyder says is just how Blake Snyder feels. It's just like he thinks something is a genre, so he calls it a genre, but it's not really a genre. I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of Save the Cat. On the other hand, his chapter on log lines, it's like chapter 2 or 3, somewhere in there. He does a chapter on log lines. Lovely. Excellent. Okay. If I could work with any writer, it would be Willie Wilder. That would be interesting. I admire and like so many writers. There are so many great ones, some of whom are living. Hello, the Blue Cannon. What are the chances of you having a spec script on the market to produce, but you want to play one of the lead roles in the films if you were trying to launch yourself as an actor? The odds of you getting it produced go down dramatically if you attach yourself in any form to it, including even staying on as a writer. They often fire you as a writer. But if you attach yourself as director, which I often did to my projects and they never got made, or as an actor, if you want to try and launch yourself as an actor, do ultra low budget that you can star in. If you can figure out a way to get the production going ultra low so that you give yourself a chance to have a good part, that's a cool plan because you could possibly get it done. As I said famously in a video I did recently about Rocky, that mythology that you're going to have a script that's so valuable that people will let you star in it, that is unbelievably unlikely. You're welcome. If I merge a subplot into the main plot at one point in the story, should I then afterwards add in? No. No one is keeping track of how many or where your subplot. It entirely depends on how it feels as you watch the story, as you create the story for yourself to watch. It's not like you need to keep the structure balanced. Like, if it doesn't have there are movies where a subplot comes in, drops out halfway through, and never shows up again. It'll all depend on the feeling of that story. There are absolutely no rules or regulations. There are no mathematical formulae which will tell you the right way to write something. The right way to write something is the way that it proceeds out of you best. So the answer is, that sounds like a cool thing if you've got a subplot and then it merges into the main plot. See how it goes. If it feels like there's something missing, add. But it's not like you need to do it for some external counting reason. Like, this scene has to have a balancing scene. That doesn't exist. I mean, it may exist for you, in which case do it. What do you think of dystopian novels? How difficult it is to write? I don't know that that's particularly difficult. I mean, I'm not saying like, that's easy. I just mean I've never heard of any particular difficulty. Dystopian stories have been fairly popular recently. I think that the only question about a dystopian novel, I mean, the thing about 1984 is it's a novel. As a movie, it's just too freaking grim. I mean, there's been some movies of it, and the thing about 1984 is brutal. 1984 is one of the most harsh, depressing, shocking, like punch the audience in the face books in history. So that's just really hard. I mean, it's just hard to take. So that's the problem. The problem with a truly dystopian novel like 1984 is it's not about triumphing over the dystopia. Okay. If I write low budget, should I focus on premise than location and scenes? Yes. Well, you should focus on a premise that is going to be limited in its location and scenes. The thing about writing for low budget is, if you are writing for low budget, your premise and your characters and your storytelling and your dialogue, all the stuff that doesn't cost anything, that should be where you put your energy into making it showy and dazzling and interesting and challenging, because you can't do that with your locations. You can't do that with your budgeted things. But it doesn't cost any more to have good dialogue than bad dialogue, or a clever plot twist than an ordinary plot twist. Okay. Any ideas for enriching your dialogue? Comes off too Danish. Yes. I actually wrote, just published like 2 weeks ago, I don't even have the thumbnail of it. I did a whole video on dialogue. But the answer is, as far as dialogue flat, go-to tools, yeah. What dialogue do you like to listen to? That's the main thing, is think about the dialogue that you like in movies, and like look at that and say, well, how are they doing that? Like, in Scorsese, it's very often conversational and casual. And then you get somebody like Sorkin, which is very crafted. I don't know which one you like, but the thing is, what you should be trying to do is say, how can I do that thing in my Danish story? That would be my go-to tool is steal away. The whole point of most art problems can be solved by stealing. That's the secret. So what you want to do is, and by stealing I mean very specific thing. Stealing means you take something and you make it yours. If you take something and you keep it the way it was, you're not stealing it. You are just borrowing it, because you haven't changed it. You haven't made it something that belongs to you. The whole point about stealing is you take it and you make it your version of that thing. Like the Marx Brothers have a very specific style. I don't try and do a Marx Brothers movie, but if you like what the Marx Brothers do, think about how could you have a character that's that anarchic? How could you have a character that's makes so many puns? Whatever it is that you like, do that. My first screenplay is it's emotion. Yes. East 1999, that is really hard. Eventually, in order to here, let me just go. In order to finish it, you likely have to, at a certain point, stop looking at it as true and say, well, what if it wasn't true? What would I do with it? What would I judge it? How would I fix it? Because the thing is, eventually, with a screenplay, other people are going to collaborate on it, and it's not true for them. So they're going to say, well, it would be even better if this happened. And you will say, but that's not true. And they will say, it doesn't matter if it's true. This is not your life. This is a story. And now you have to say what makes the story work. If you really, really insist, and by the way, I'm not saying this is wrong, but if you really, really want to tell a true story, either you have to make it yourself, do it ultra, ultra low budget DIY, in which case you could be totally true, or like you could do whatever you want, or write it in a form that's not a script. Write it as a poem or a play or a novel or whatever, because then you can keep to the truth as best you know it. However, one of the questions becomes, is the point to capture the truth? Which can be. There are some really great stories in which the point of it is to capture what really happened, whether or not it's a good story. Could this work for a comedy? So, yes, absolutely. Sure. Nobody's ever going to find me saying there's a bad idea. I don't believe in bad ideas. I believe all ideas can work. Not sure if this is an appropriate place. Would you recommend a screenwriting MFA program? Yeah. Alex, can you email me? Hold on. This is okay. Just Alex, about this, because it is personal. We should talk privately about that. Okay. For the last 3 days, I did everything but write. I do have to. Yes. Yeah. If you want to write, you have to. there's nothing wrong with taking a couple days off. Now and then, sure. But if you find yourself not writing and you're not feeling good about it and stuff, yeah, force yourself. It's better to write forced stuff than to not write. You can always fix the forced stuff. You can't fix something that you didn't write. Yes, yeah, Pedro is right. Thomas is essentially saying the same thing. I read and watch. Like steal. It's just steal away. Everything has been done except by you. This is right. Umbraman, in reply to the question about what do you do if you feel like your stuff isn't original enough, make it. Here's the thing about original. Original is only one value. Another value is powerful. Now, a lot of good work takes a completely familiar, cliched story and says, I am going to make this the kick-assest version of this story, a coming-of-age story, a story of whatever. And you say, how can I make this the best, the most emotionally powerful? Those are values. They're not original, but they're values that people want. Sometimes the value is just the cleverness by which you handle the familiar thing. What do you find? Neither. I find scene description was harder to learn how to do because my original approach was always I'm going to over describe. I want to describe as well as possible. So for me, dialogue was easier because I just wrote the dialogue. It came to me, I wrote it down, I crafted it. Scene description was more challenging for a long time. Now it's not too bad. It took me a long time to learn how to keep it down, to cut it down. And so that was more challenging, actually. No, I have not seen it yet. Yay. Okay, hope to see you too. Good. So, which is better in writing? Better plot, logical creativity. Neither is better. Both are required. It's not a competition. It's not an either or. The whole point is that you do both. If you don't do both, it's not better. The better thing is to go back and forth to say, oh, I had this feeling, and that's a cool feeling, and I'm going to follow it there. Then your logical creative part comes in and says, oh, but that means that this other scene will have to take place later at night or something because of the logic. But neither one is right. It's just a question of, sometimes you say, oh, logically, I'm going to need a reason that this character does things. I need a scene here that motivates them. So the logic says, I need this scene. Then your feelings show up and they say, okay, in this scene, how can I motivate it? Oh, I feel it would be great if a ghost told him, That's whichever one you're working from, feelings or logic, the other one gets a say sometime later. Okay, no more questions. We're running late. What are the chances of you having a spec script on the indie market to produce, but you want to play one of the lead roles? The answer is, somebody just asked this. The answer are the chances become terrible. The odds, unless you are an established actor, you're adding yourself in as an actor to your script means it's that much harder for them to get the money to make the movie. Because one of the ways that they raise money is if they have name actors, famous actors, people who they recognize. You're more likely to go to a movie if there are actors that you recognize. So therefore, producers try to cast movies with known actors. However, now and then they'll throw in one part that isn't. It won't be the lead. So therefore, if you are trying to get a script made and you say, I'm going to ask that you add this quality in, which makes it that much harder to raise the money, it's just that much harder to raise money. Okay. I've read most popular books on screenwriting, but they didn't really teach me anything I didn't already know. Yes. Honestly, I would say this. It is entirely possible to teach yourself writing just by writing, just by watching stuff and enjoying it and writing what you want to write from that absorbed knowledge. That is entirely possible. There is no set of rules that you actually, it's not like flying a plane, okay? It's not like, oh, if I didn't throw that switch, the whole thing's going to crash. You can write a script entirely on instinct. Maybe it'll be good, maybe it won't. If not, sometimes the screenwriting books are useful in that they show you things you didn't know. And so, but if it's working without it, don't use them. Okay. Sorry, Thumper. Don't worry. We're leaving. It's almost over. I wouldn't like to write a true story. To me, they're always less. I don't know. I don't think. First of all, I think that fiction is based in truth, and truth, when you tell it, is always fictionalized to a certain extent. So therefore, they're like that. Truth, fiction. There is no such thing as a truth. Even journalism is not truth. It's an interpretation. And yeah, like Kitschy, I will take authentic or emotional over original anytime. Hey, Fatherhood, how you doing? Good to see you. And alas, you have kind of missed it because I'm about to leave. Great, I'm very glad, Nate L. Holmes. That's okay, Maisie. Don't worry. It will be here. Okay. You have a lovely weekend too. Actually, 2 weeks. Thank you. Happy holidays. Yeah, I'm taking off 2 weeks. I will be back the 28th. I got some stuff to take care of. Until then, do yourself and me a favor. Go write something.